Yo, this statement might actually earn me a few unsubscribes, but every entrepreneur that I know that's a die-hard proponent and champion of hustle culture, they all have one thing in common. They're insanely insecure. They're always trying to prove something to someone rather than focusing on living the life that they actually want to live. And that's the danger of hustle culture. It's doing so much more harm than good for entrepreneurs in this country. So today on Own the Exit, we want to throat punch hustle culture and talk about how to actually build a business that serves the life that you want to live rather than only serving the egos of the insecure. So stick around. This one's gonna be a banger. All right, everybody, welcome back to Own the Exit. I'm your co-host, Caleb, here in the studio with my bro, Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
How's it going, Caleb? Excited to be with you guys for another episode of Own the Exit.
Yeah, hey, if you haven't yet hit the subscribe button on YouTube, click that subscribe button, okay? You don't want to miss episodes of Own the Exit. If we're adding value, share it with some other folks. We're going to dive in. Today, Aaron, you and I talk a lot about this. We've had these conversations. We know that the mentality that kind of has gotten championed on social media over the last, decade plus around entrepreneurship. And it's been longer than that. I remember joining my first kind of business mentorship and things like that. And I remember them putting up at one of the events I went to, putting up this screen, this image on the drop-down projection screen or whatever of a candle burning on both ends and in the middle and everything like that. And talking about how this is entrepreneurship. This is building. You got to burn the candle on both ends, right? You got to wake up early and stay up late and always be working and go out of balance for a season and all that kind of stuff if you ever want to have what you want. And I bought into that early on. And the challenge was, though, it didn't serve my life. And so what I wanted and then what I thought would be a great topic for us to talk about with our listeners here on Own the Exit is this myth that buying into hustle culture is actually the way to build a business that's truly like sets you free financially. And I think it's actually more enslaving than it is freeing. What are your thoughts, man? Let's jump in and talk about it.
Yeah, I think, like you said at the opening there, a lot of it's based in insecurity or rooted in insecurity. I think that can be a big factor because I don't think you know that. It's something that is like deep within. Yeah. Like when you start a business, you're working, you think you're doing it to get to a certain point, and then you get to that point, but then you just keep working more. Yeah. You double down, you go to the next point. And I think a lot of that can be like you said, rooted in the insecurity of trying to prove to yourself or others, maybe it's your father or father figure, maybe it's just, it's deep, right? You don't even know why you're doing it or why you're trying to prove, because no one cares. Yeah. And so it's getting to this goal after goal of trying to, being able to post on social media that you have 10 businesses and all these things going on. When at the end of the day, it would just be more simple to have one. Yeah. And just have a normal work week and be smarter with time and balance. And I think a lot of it too is like different phases of life. Because I think if you're single, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't have a spouse, you're able to work longer hours, you have more freedom with time in that sense because you don't have other responsibilities.
I think that's a really good point right there that you're making. If you're younger, if you're single, then the counterweight to the balance of work, that's probably going to be a bunch of bad decisions, right? It's probably going to be a bunch of stuff you don't want to do that's not actually the life you want to live. It's probably going out and partying. It's probably going out and doing dumb stuff or staying up late playing Xbox or whatever you do when you're young and you don't have as many responsibilities in the home, right? Yeah. So that's actually a really good time to go out of balance because the stuff that kind of counterbalances that typically is a bunch of bad decisions anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think if you're working, we always use the example of working 80 hours a week. I think there's times that you have to work 80 hours a week and it's just part of the job. Sure. If you're starting something that might not necessarily be based in insecurity, it might just be that much work that there is to do. But I think just examining our motivations too, right? Yeah. Of like why we're doing it. Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's really easy to get caught up in that. And like you said, the ego and the whole reason that we become entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs, is so that we can have freedom and time freedom. But I was thinking of how I was talking to one guy like exited his business and now he doesn't have like worth. He's got a bunch of money in the bank account, but no one knows that he has the money. They just know that he doesn't have any. He's not building anything. He's not doing anything. He doesn't have a business anymore. So he's, oh man, I'm a nobody now.
Yeah.
And so I think that can creep in, like you said, the ego and the insecurity of just validating ourselves by working more. And I think it can be a trap.
Yeah. I think that just to help make it clear for listeners, I think giving definition to what insecurity actually is will help people to realize that they're a lot of times more insecure than they think they are. I know it certainly does that for me. I would define it this way. Insecurity is the byproduct of an overinflated ego that thinks that everyone in the room is paying as much attention to you as you are. Right. And so if you are 100 pounds overweight and you walk into a room and are insecure about that, then the reason you're insecure about that is your assumption that everybody in the room places you at the center of their attention. They're looking at you. When the reality is they're probably not. They're looking at themselves. They're thinking about themselves. They're not even paying attention to you. They have no idea that you're 100 pounds overweight.
They don't care. They're focused on themselves.
Exactly. They're focused on them. So we spend so much energy thinking that all these other people are paying attention to us. And so we're trying to prove something to them and they don't actually even care. Like nobody cares about the fact that I bought my wife that car or that I did that. So I don't do those things for those people. I do those things for her, for my family, those kind of things. And so I'm like, but when it comes to building a business, I remember on Instagram a few probably, I don't know, what's it been, 10 years ago or something, the hashtag rise and grind started trending and everybody was blowing up Instagram feeds, stories, whatever it is, with they're waking up at 4 a.m., starting their worday, all that kind of stuff. It's, hey, wake up and start working. And it became this cultural phenomena that I would say it's maybe even been, it's been in existence longer, but I would say that really pushed the modern push of the rise of the modern day hustle culture movement. And I think social media makes people feel like they should be working all the time because, they're doing that and it works both ways. Like you watch somebody and they're like living this amazing life, this dream life. They're on the beach in Maui and they're like sipping Mai Tais and their kids are playing in the sand. And you're like, man, they must have worked really hard to make enough money to be able to go do that. So I just need to work harder. But then you look at the other guy that's like constantly videoing the fact that he's at work and he's, man, that dude's working hard. I'm inspired by him. I need to work harder. And it's like everything you watch is just like the answer is I need to work harder, when the truth is, we talk about this a lot. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. And it's about giving an actual balance and definition to what it is what do you want to accomplish? What life do you want to live? Do you need $1 million a year to live the life that you want to live?
2 million, actually.
Yeah, hey, I'm right there with you. But I'm just saying, so many people, they set their sights on this big goal. But if you dig down under the surface and ask, why do you want to achieve that? They have no idea.
How odd would it be to be working 80 hours a week for someone else's, some unseen force, their approval?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, we all know this money doesn't make you any more fulfilled.
No.
And I think most people don't know that because they haven't had a lot of money or they haven't had that opportunity. Yeah. They might say it, but they haven't experienced that. But people that I've talked to or just on my journey, like when you come to that realization that it doesn't actually fix you, then why are you trying to get more in an unhealthy way? Because what really does bring that fulfillment and that satisfaction it's the intangible things. It's health, it's relationships. It's all the things that suffer by doing the rising grind hustle culture. Those are the things that actually do bring the peace and the fulfillment and the settledness, and it's that balance. And so I think that getting out of balance, like you said, at time, because I've heard balance like defined as like those guys on those tight ropes with the sticks, and they're like falling over to one side almost, and then the other side. It's never like perfect, right?
No.
So you got to like flex. Same thing with family. There might be something that comes up, and it's, I can't do this now, or work thing comes up, or a health thing, or a vacation. A vacation throws everything out the window.
Yeah.
And so there's just different seasons or times like where it's like you're just navigating. That's why I view balance isn't like everything fits into a perfect box. Like, hey, it's this amount of hours for this and this. It's just navigating it. But when that happens for too long, then the things that truly bring that peace and fulfillment actually suffer.
Totally. It's the fact that work-life, if you want to call it work-life balance, it's dynamic, not static. You can't just make decision day after day of this is how we're going to do it, and it's never going to change, and I'm never going to spend more time at work. I'm never going to spend more time at home. It's just going to be, everything's going to be compartmentalized and in its perfect box. Something's going to suffer.
Yeah.
Something's going to suffer when you try to do it that way. But it's understanding that it's dynamic. It's that if I've got a lot on my plate with my business that I've got to work an hour or 2 or 3 over today, then I should be caught up to be able to balance that out tomorrow. And maybe it's not perfect. Maybe I go in an hour later or something like that. You know what I mean? But I want to really shift gears around that, because what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand is that hustle culture statistically, scientifically has contributed to the rise in mental health problems amongst entrepreneurs.
Right.
I was actually reading study from the National Institute of Mental Health that found about 1 in 3 American adults deal with some sort of anxiety problem. Now, while this is a lot of people, it's much less than the number of business owners who face anxiety issues.
It's 100%.
Right? So totally. 1 out of 3 adults struggle with anxiety, but over half of entrepreneurs struggle with like clinical anxiety. Now I know 100% of entrepreneurs.
The normal pressures, right?
The jokes that we were making earlier is, hey, there's 2 types of entrepreneurs: the ones that struggle with anxiety and the ones that don't make any money. Right? That's it. But no, I just want to read off a couple of these statistics that I read in an article on the Founders Report from the National Institute of Mental Health. 19.8% of entrepreneurs struggle with clinical depression. 34.5% of entrepreneurs report dealing with significant stress and burnout. 50.2% of entrepreneurs have experienced or struggle with clinical anxiety. And almost 88% of entrepreneurs report struggling with at least one mental health issue. So almost 90% of entrepreneurs are struggling with mental health and are willing to admit it. According to these studies.
That's crazy.
10,000 plus person blind studies, right? They're willing to admit, I'm an entrepreneur. I rise and grind, baby. # rise and grind. Wake up at 4 a.m. and I hate my life most days. Or I think, man, this is really hard. Or I'm struggling at some level with mental health problem. I would call it and label it a mental health problem. So what are your thoughts on that, Aaron?
Man, that's a tough one. I think when I think of mental health, I think of the same as physical health, in the sense of, if you're so out of balance, then you're not able to do the things that contribute to mental health, because you just neglect those things. Just like physical health. You neglect your body and your diet, and you're taking care of yourself because there's no time for that. Yeah. And I think for mental health, it's the same thing. Things that contribute to mental health, like being out in nature, doing hobbies, like disciplining yourself. If you like golfing and you're like, I don't have time for that, you need to make time, because that's something that can contribute to your mental health, right? Or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, reading, like fiction books that don't like add to your business, right? But whatever it is for you, because I've studied mental health just a little bit, of like, okay, what can I do to be more healthy mentally? Yeah. And it's detaching from those things. And it really, this hustle culture that we're talking about goes against that. Yeah. So I think people have mental health issues in all spheres of society. I think employees all struggle with not all, but it's just humanity. Yeah. But I think that it can get exacerbated as an entrepreneur, because you're so focused on that 80-hour work week to make money or validate yourself or whatever your motivations are, that you really just neglect that. Yeah. When I think entrepreneurs are a specific segment of the population, right, they either like working, or they're just very driven or focused, because not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, right? Or they think they do, but they don't. They probably don't, because it's a certain kind of path. But then the pitfalls of that are just neglecting everything else. Yeah,
I have to admit, I probably used to think that it was noble of me to, if I was going to sacrifice and give extra hours to business and that kind of stuff, that it was noble of me to sacrifice sleep to do that, because I could make statements, like really ideologically beautiful statements, like, I'm not taking time away from my family to do this. I'm just taking time away from my sleep. I'm still spending all the time with my family. I'm just not sleeping. But
The quality of time with your family goes down a little bit.
yeah. But Isaac, our marketing director, sent me some research on that in preparation for this episode.
Yeah.
And there was a study that showed how, I think it was just 1 week, only 1 week of sleeping less than 6 hours a night led to fundamental changes in more than 700 genome markers in the human body. So rest isn't just good for our health, right? It's actually, like, sleep is not only good for our health, it's actually critical to our success in business and in life, because I may think, oh, I'll just burn the candle on both ends. I'll just stay up late after the kids go to bed and get some workout and just grind. And then I'll just wake up early and grind. And I'll be fine on 3 or 4 hours of sleep or 4 or 5 hours of sleep or whatever. When the reality is that by taking that away, I'm literally taking years of my life off by doing that consistently. What are your thoughts around that? I guess I'll just ask, do you get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night?
I try to get 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 is my minimum. I hate getting 6.
Yep.
It's
Same.
just like,
Anything
I
less,
get angry
yeah.
if I know I've got to get up in 6 hours. So I like 8 is the goal,
Yeah.
but 7 is
Totally.
probably where it lands. How about you?
How many? Yeah. So I track my sleep every single night because I know there's so much science behind productivity connected with how well rested you are. And actually one of the biggest proponents of hustle culture, Grant Cardone, right? I'm calling him out right here on the Exit. I love you, Grant. I love you, Uncle G. But but one of the things that he really gets right is he says, I'm not going to sacrifice sleep. I'm going to sleep 8 hours a night no matter what. So there is something like connected to that. If you're a highly active, highly productive person, and that's good, by the way, we're not shooting down like being highly productive. We're not throat punching being highly productive. We're throat punching this feeling that the only way that you can be successful is if you literally burn yourself out. You just work, have no balance, don't do anything fun, just grind and sacrifice your family and sacrifice your sleep and all that kind of stuff. And what we're trying to get at is that the brain actually will shut down if you do that for long enough. If you rob yourself of sleep, it will shut down your most creative, most productive parts of your brain will begin to shut down, and you will become less and less impactful the more you try to give to it.
Yeah, I've read some studies on that too, where after you get to a certain amount of hours, the output per hour decreases.
Totally.
And so to the point where, let's say I'm working 12 hours a day at 50% capacity, wouldn't I rather just work 6?
Yeah.
At full capacity?
Yeah.
And then be done with that?
100%. It's the whole concept of deep work, right? It's like, I tell you all the time, we're doing like these visionary Zoom calls or whatever, we're talking, and I'm like, all right, we just talked for 2 hours, visionary, awesome, this is amazing, but now I've got 8 hours of work to do, and I only have 3 hours of work to do it in. And so I have just personally, and I'm not saying I do it perfectly every day, but I have the capacity to go into that zone because I'm well rested, I'm eating good food, I'm exercising, I'm taking care of myself, I'm spending time with my family, I go and do things that I enjoy, right? So I can get in that zone a whole lot easier than I could in times past when I was just trying to grind all the time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
There was this study by a Boston consulting group that shows that enforced breaks in a workplace, like actually forcing people to take a break during their workday, improved overall work performance and improved people's job satisfaction. Meditation, a form of mental downtime, has been found to enhance people's cognitive abilities. And expert meditators often outperform non-meditators in tasks requiring visual attention, suggesting that meditation's positive impact on cognitive function. So what do you think specifically about the art of meditation? I'm just trying to give some practical stuff. These studies, they should inform how we think about approaching work. I do, for example, I do breath work and meditation. I'm a Christian, so I meditate on a scripture or meditate on a proverb or whatever in the morning. I just read it and just sit and think on it and try to be quiet. But I also do breath work every morning, that kind of thing. And I really feel like it sets my mind in a good place for the day. What are your thoughts on like different things like that? Breath work, meditation, are those valuable tools that you've ever implemented or used?
Yeah, I like having quiet times. I'm not a huge, like the classic meditation. Like, I've never been like a good meditator. But I think there's value in that. And it's only because I think if you can get your mind off of the work, for me, that's the biggest thing. Going home and let's say I'm done for the day and then my mind is continuing to replay the scenarios or think about the future or what I'm doing the next day, or I'm trying to solve problems in my mind while being with my family. It's like my mind kind of not working great. That's like 30%.
Yeah.
And I think the meditating, or what you said, like of getting away from that can be good to just turn your brain off from that.
Yeah.
And recharge it with something different. And I don't think you have to be sleeping necessarily, but there's been many days, like weeks, where I'm working like, quote, working like 16 hours a day because I'm sleeping 8, but from the moment I wake up, like I'll grab my phone, I'll roll over, grab my phone, and I'll start working in my mind. And so until I go to sleep at 11 at night. And so I think that would be I guess my comment on that meditation is like disciplining yourself to not look at your phone at a certain time, or not looking at the screens an hour before bed because the blue screen can mess with your sleep. Things like that, where you're just segmenting those times for rest and for because that's mental health.
Yeah. And like building in like intentional practices that help you break your mind away from that. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is that meditation is one of those practices that you can do it even for a short period of time, even like doing a 1-minute pause in your car before you go into your house at the end of the workday, and just taking a moment to clear your mind of everything so that you can go in fully present and be there with your family, right? And so
like Mark Zuckerberg took up like mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And so he did that because what he said when I was reading his explanation was like, it's so hard mentally and physically, like somebody's going to like literally choke me out. I can't think about Facebook when I'm on the mat.
Yeah.
And that's why he was doing it, was to rest his mind, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
so literally pay to go to a class to have someone choke you out so that you don't think about work.
Get into a life or death scenario.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. So that's the big takeaway from today's episode is pay someone to do physical harm and pain, like inflict physical pain on your body, so that it'll take your mind off of your business. So you're welcome. So I think a lot of people probably would listen to an episode like this, and I would imagine some pushback from a certain group of people, right? And it's going to be the people that are successful on paper, right? They look at their bank account, they got a lot of money. They look at their cars, they got nice cars. They look at their house, they got a nice house. They look at their wife, they've got a beautiful wife, right? And 3 beautiful kids that are all dressed great. And they're like, I did that by rising and grinding and hustling and working 80 hours a week and all that kind of stuff. But if you were to dig in deep and really be able to, as my pastor back in North Carolina used to say, pass around a bottle of real pills, right? Everybody takes a real pill, and just like everybody just gets brutally honest. Are you living the life that you want to live? Is that the life that you actually want? Are you happy? Are you joyful? Do you enjoy waking up in that house every day next to that wife, with those kids, with that car, right? It's like money doesn't solve all your problems. It does solve your money problems, right? But it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't create happiness. It doesn't do any of that. It's just a metric that humanity has created to measure accomplishments. And so I guess that's leading to a question. You've had a tremendous amount of success, more than most people would realize, in having conversation with you, because you're very humble, you're very approachable. But how have you maintained that sense of, this is the life I want to live, and everything that I'm building in terms of success should serve that life that I want to live? How have you kept that at the center?
Definitely a learning process.
Sure.
Of trying to figure that out, of trying to separate myself from my business, not get too entangled with it. My wife's good with helping me with that, because she is more into the experiences, like we were like the experiences, the meditation, the travel, the mental health, those things, hobbies, things like that, relationships, connection, all those things that are inward. because that's where you have to wrestle with yourself, right? With your insecurities, you can try to make another $1 million and for what purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good question. And I think it's a journey that I'm on is the people that I actually, because we're talking about looking on social media and idolizing or getting sucked into that culture, the people that I idolize are the people that actually have that freedom inside of themselves to actually just have passive income or to not. There's this guy I know who he just doesn't really, he's like, he works on cars in the morning. He's got like this car project. He's like building this like classic car.
Yeah.
He only works like a couple hours a day. Obviously, not everyone can do that, but he worked for a long time, like 15 years building a business.
Yeah.
So now he's at the point where I'm like, dude, now you can build a team. You can just scale it. He's like, nah, I'm living the life I want. I've got a nice house. I got my family. I just monitor things. And he's fine with that. He's not trying to prove to anybody anything.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like being able to like that peace that he's arrived at where he's just good with that. Yeah. And he's, he makes fun of me almost because I'm like trying to do, and he's like, why are you trying to do all that? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like, I think part of it is just wanting to build something, and that can be good and healthy and fine too. But I think it's just like identifying it, like becoming self-aware and like digging, like you said. Yeah. And so he dug in and found out that he's like content, right, with himself. And so that's a long answer, but
I think one thing that I've observed about you, having been partnered with you in business for some years now, is that you've been able to graduate from the focusing on making millions to the much more noble ambition of making millionaires. Like you've paved your own path to that. And now you're looking at other people. I think of that like even with our network multiplier model program. Right. We have those guys come. Like the goal with that is to take guys that are already successful in an industry and help them make millions of dollars in real estate while they stay focused on their primary business. Yeah. And give them an avenue and a platform and a vehicle where that's possible, and coaching and all that kind of stuff where that actually is possible to do and achievable in condensed timeframes. And I think when you are able to just not continue to focus on how do I get another million? How do I get another zero? How do I get another comma? But how do I take the success that I've experienced and give it away to someone else while living the life that I want to live? That to me is the definition of success. It's I'm living the life that I want. I think it's Tony Robbins defines success in this way, and I love it. I love this definition, and I may get the quote wrong, but I'll get it close. It's success is being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, however much you want. That's success. So, so then the question you got to answer is, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be doing? Because that's what's going to determine whether you're successful or not how many zeros or how many commas you have in the bank account or what house you have. If the house is the big thing that you want, then that's it. But for most people, it's not. Right? It's like just a place to live, and you want it to be nice and comfortable and safe for your family. But outside of that, it's like, what do you actually want? And I think we should pivot the conversation because I want to give our listeners some strategies for how to work smarter, not harder. I think that's really important. Yeah. That's how you get there. That's how you get to the life that you want. Number one, it's define what's the life that you want to live. Don't let your insecurity hijack your journey and get you focusing on what everyone else thinks about you and what everyone else is looking at and what everybody else is doing and all of this. Like, just define what it is that you actually want and go after and get that. Yeah. And that's success. But then how? I guess the question is like the how behind the what, right? How do you do that?
I'm just thinking of the 8-hour work week. I think a lot of times like new entrepreneurs, they're working 80 hours a week because they're not very skilled at working. They're not very smart. Wow. They're just putting in the hours, right? It's like, I'll just stay up later. Yeah. Instead of
it's so true, because thinking about how to half your time when you're early on is figuring out how to do the thing that needs to be done, right?
Yeah, and I'm working less hours now than I was working like 2 years ago because of being smarter, auditing my time, only doing things that I'm good at, which I could do in a shorter amount of time than someone else, or solve that problem quicker. And then you've got to start somewhere, but eventually when you have a team of people, then that helps too, because you have people that are doing things that they're good at.
Yeah.
One thing we have an analyst, a financial analyst who works, and it's funny because I was like, he actually has another full-time job. And I was like, what the heck? And I was like, how do you do the other job too? And he's, I've got enough automations in place for my other job that it pretty much just runs. And so I can work for you guys. I was like, all right. So that's like an idea of working smart. He's working for a large national company remotely, producing the output that they require.
But he's automated his job.
He's just monitoring it. It's a lot of financial data importing and syncing and a lot of reconciling. And he's built the integrations to basically just do the job for him.
Yeah.
So that's an idea of, okay, he doesn't have to stay up till midnight trying to do 2 jobs. Like he got his job like running, and then I'm like, he's probably doing that like for us too.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I don't care.
No, we're paying for an output. Like an employer's paying for an output. Like they want something to get done. As long as that gets done, that's what matters. I don't care how much time it takes you. If you spend 40 hours doing that one thing, great, it got done. If you spend 1 hour doing that one thing and it's awesome, then awesome.
I think every job there's ways, because there's some jobs where it's just like you're a farmer getting the stuff, whatever, that's many hours it takes. But I think in everything, there's got to be some ways to shave off some.
For sure.
Even if it's 10, 20%.
There's always ways to be more productive.
That could really help, because if you're working 8 hours a day and you shave off 20%, that's like almost 2 hours that you don't have to work now.
Yeah.
And you can only work 6. So
I think about the theory, because what I'm hearing you say is automating as much of your like stuff as you can, like finding ways to hack it and just to where it runs. Years ago, I think about this like literally with family life. Years ago, Kayla, my wife, we both discovered that neither of us like to go grocery shopping. Neither of us like to think about what we were going to cook for food. Like it just was a drag constantly. And so we're like, all right, let's figure out how to just simplify and automate this so that neither of us ever have to do it. And it was the dawn of Instacart, right? When we had that realization.
Love Instacart.
I love it because like we basically just have kind of the same recipe list, the same order, the same everything, and it just gets shipped to our house on the same day. And it's automated. And so something that we hate doing that takes hours to do now takes 0 time to do.
Yeah.
And there's so thinking about in your business, are there tasks that you're doing, things that you don't enjoy? You're just doing them. Like, how can you automate those, and how can you get those done with less of your time so that you can spend more of that time focusing on the things that you actually care about, or the things that you're uniquely gifted at or uniquely skilled at?
That's something I'm a little bit of a slow learner because I just work more.
Yeah.
And I think I've been realizing that too. Like, I think like Abraham Lincoln, I don't think he actually it's the quote's attributed to him, but if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend 4 hours sharpening my axe.
Yep.
And sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, or you're starting something, you're so busy, you don't have time for efficiency, which is just silly, right?
Yeah.
Because if you would just stop and sharpen your axe, a lot of these things, the hours could start to be less. And so I think it's like, I call it like dumb work. When you're like, I'll just work more hours. Like I've done that, like where you just keep working, but instead of like just figuring out whether it's automation, whether it's someone helping, whether it's like just refining, whether it's training, maybe you have to stop for a while and go study or learn something, but then, because you can't look at like your output per day, you have to look at it per quarterly or
and
yearly.
Probably really even yearly, I was going to say.
Yeah, so you're
and
kind
then
of
if you're the business owner, you almost have to look at it like another Tony Robbins quote. It's like almost everyone underestimates what they can do in a year or overestimates what they can do in a year and underestimates what they could do in 10 years.
Yeah, and I've heard that for a day and a year too.
Yeah. You overestimate what you can do in a day and underestimate what you could do in a year. But then the more expansive time that you give it, the more that becomes true. And I think as we begin to wrap this episode up, I think I'm seeing there is a shift though in the entrepreneurial world where more and more successful business owners are talking about more mindful business practices.
I think, especially if you're thinking long term, right?
Yeah, because there really is a realization like like entrepreneurs are burning themselves out all the time. And I think there's a correlation there between the 87% of entrepreneurs, right? That statistic, 87% of entrepreneurs say that they struggle with at least one mental health issue. And then a counter statistic that's very similar, it's about 87% of all like entrepreneurial ventures that start end up failing within the first 2 to 5 years. And a lot of that is because the entrepreneur burns out, I would say.
Yeah, I never thought of it. One of the reasons.
I'm not saying that they're a perfect correlation, but I'm saying like
yeah. And if this conversation is about getting stuff done, working, then that decreases your output.
Yeah.
Because if you burn out, you can be out for a while.
Oh yeah.
Or if you have low days where you you hit an emotional wall, like I've worked like at times when I can't really work anymore. Like emotionally, you hit like an obstacle.
Totally.
And I think it's because it compounds to not like having the balance or the rest. So it's like you get off to a good start, but then you stall. And then the other guy is just able to be consistent and balanced and actually accomplishes more over a year.
Yeah.
So looking at it from a longer term perspective. And I think for employees too, like pushing your employees to work longer hours, like it's the same thing. Like it could work in the short term, but then like it backfires because then they burn out or they become less productive. Or they leave the company or they just, they don't want to do it anymore.
They go get a job where they feel more valued and more like it's if I'm going to work this hard, I either want to get paid more or I want that kind of thing. Man, this is a great conversation. I feel like it's something that's so important, I think, for our listeners. You're building a business. You're building it with the end in mind. You're reverse engineering right now back to where you are from where you want to be. But the big question that I would encourage you as a takeaway from this episode, the big idea and big question is ask yourself, what is it that you actually want? Get clear on what it is you actually want your business to accomplish for you. What is a successful exit for you? Is it a soft exit where you set your business on autopilot with automations and employees who are running it and you're able to withdraw and spend 10% of your time on your business and 90% of your time on your other things that you care about? Or is it a full-blown exit where you want to build it to a point where you can scale it? Either way, you need to ask yourself the question, what do I want? Not just in terms of what do I want the outcome of my business to be, but you need to ask yourself the question, what is it that you want in your life? If you're not asking that question regularly and getting clarity on that question, then you're likely to fall into some of the traps that Aaron and I talked about today. And the reason that I'm sharing this with you is because I care too much about entrepreneurs being successful and entrepreneurs actually living the life that they want to not sit here and confront you on your insecurity that's driving the ego and hustle culture that you've bought into. So I'm just asking you, consider the question, what do you want in your life? And what do you need to do in your business to achieve that desired life by design? Aaron, any final thoughts for today's episode?
No, it's awesome. And this is something that we need to keep reminding ourselves of because it's so easy to get caught up in that fray of just working more and thinking that like working more even equates to more. But like in this, we're just realizing or talking through it actually doesn't.
It doesn't.
Because when you have mental health issues, when you have physical health, when you have relationships that weaken because they're not being invested in, have you gained anything?
Yeah. It's like exercise. You can work out and exercise to the point of diminishing returns where you're actually pushing your body so hard that it's hurting your body more than it's helping it. And it's the same with business. It's the same with life. It's the same with anything. Moderation is important. So, all right, that's everything we got for you guys today on The Exit. Go out there and crush it. Own your exit. If you haven't yet, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and hit the subscribe button there as well, or on Apple Podcasts, and share this with as many people as that could benefit from Own the Exit. Thanks so much, guys.